Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. This episode, I'll be asking who built the cages, Joe? Then, House of Representatives has officially created a new rule that will fine any member of Congress for failing to complete security screening prior to entering the House floor. Jumping over to Seattle, schools teach K through 5 students to pick gender, disrupt the nuclear family. The Biden administration moves to free up $1.3 billion in funding for Puerto Rico, and women are missing from the GameStop news. Experts blame this fratty subreddit. So let's get started. The Biden administration is reopening an overflow facility in Texas for unaccompanied migrant children apprehended at the U.S. Mexico border. It comes amid an increase in apprehensions plus reduced capacity limits at other facilities due to COVID 19. The Health and Human Services Department will reopen a facility in Carrizo Springs, Texas that can accommodate about 700 children and can be expanded if necessary. So let's stop and check what they're saying, right? They're reopening an overflow facility for unaccompanied migrant children. It is not they're throwing children in cages. They're not separating children from their families at the border and throwing them in cages like Trump was doing. It's just an overflow facility, friends, for unaccompanied migrant children. But how are they unaccompanied? I don't know many 10-year-old kids who would walk hundreds of miles by themselves into the United States. They're probably accompanied by somebody. So, how are they unaccompanied? How are they in an overflow facility? In what conditions are they staying in? I'm willing to bet they're in some sort of chain link enclosure, but definitely not a cage. It's just, there's some sort of metal mesh that surrounds them. We'll call it a very loosely knit Faraday cage, friends. The reopening of the facility comes amid an increase in apprehensions of unaccompanied children on the southwest border, fueled in part by deteriorating conditions in Latin America and a perceived possible relaxation of enforcement. Who would have thought that Joe Biden, and if Joe Biden was elected president, there would be a possible perceived possible relaxation of enforcement of immigration policy on the southwest border of the United States? It's almost exactly like what Trump said during the campaign. And reduced capacity limits at other facilities due to COVID 19. It also comes as President Joe Biden rolls out new immigration executive orders tackling migration to the U.S. southern border. Unaccompanied children who cross the border are taken in custody by the Department of Homeland Security and referred to the HHS through a Trump era policy also makes them subject to expulsion if placed in care. Case managers work to place a child with a sponsor in the United States, like a parent or relative. Again, I'm going to ask how they crossed the border unaccompanied because when I was 8 years old, I was pretty stupid. I crossed highways by myself, but I was still a stupid, ignorant little 8-year-old. There's no way I would have crossed multiple countries into the United States without assistance. It's something I just wouldn't have survived. I wouldn't have been able to forage for food or drink clean water. I would not have made it. Not saying that it's not possible, but I'm definitely saying that it's not probable that you're having that many migrant children coming over without the. I believe they're being separated from the border and they're being, in this, it's just sugar coated reporting. Jumping over to the House of Representatives. With the passing of this rule on Tuesday evening, members who fail to comply with security screenings will be fined $5,000 for the first offense and $10,000 for the second offense. These fines will be deducted directly from members' salaries by the chief administrative officer. When metal detectors were installed outside of the House floor January 12th for all members and staffers to walk through, many lawmakers aired their frustrations. On Tuesday evening, lawmakers appeared compliant with the new security measures and went through the metal detectors before entering the House floor. The vote was 216 to 10, basically party lines. Rep. Jim McGovern, a Massachusetts Democrat who's chairman of the Rules Committee, said on the House floor Tuesday why it was important for members to abide by the metal detectors. These metal detectors are manned by the same police officers who saved our lives during the insurrection while risking their own. I'm old enough to remember when a lot of these members of Congress wanted to defund the police, but now the police are the best thing since sliced bread, McGovern said. Some members on the other side have disrespected these Capitol Police officers, verbally abused them, pushed them aside, and disregarded their orders. Again, Capitol Police do report to the Congress. It's not the other way around. All to avoid this basic safety measure. That is no way to treat our heroes. So I do kind of object to what's being proposed here. So they're making it seem like the Capitol Police are there to protect Congress from themselves. No, the Capitol Police are there to protect Congress from crazy people like what happened on January 6th, and they did their job. The Capitol Police should not be the like brown. Oh, I'm not. That's slippery slope. Should not be used as a weapon for the majority party to abuse the rights of the minority party in Congress. So right now, you're taking away the Second Amendment rights for some of these members of Congress who do not have 24/7 access to Capitol Police protection, like Speaker Pelosi does, like any person in leadership in the legislative branch. They get 24-hour protection by the Capitol Police. But the other members of Congress are not afforded that same opportunity. So you have, like I said in a previous episode, you have Lauren Boebert. I'm going to keep using her as an example. She's 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. What is she supposed to do if somebody comes up to her and starts wailing on her because they don't like her political ideology? Again, she's 5 feet tall, 100 pounds. Last time I checked, she's probably no Scarlett Johansson in the Avengers. She probably won't be breaking some dude's neck with her thighs. It would be amazing to see, but I doubt it would happen. Rep. Tom Cole of Oklahoma, the top Republican on the Rules Committee, argued against the new measures on the House floor Tuesday, requiring members to pass through a metal detector each time they enter the House floor, even if they haven't left the area, is a sure recipe for chaos. It's impossible for members to socially distance when they are stacked up in a line to await their turn and passing through metal detectors. This is a clear recipe for disorganization and gridlock. I see his point. So if you're allotted only a certain amount of time to vote for something, and then you can't go vote for it, or you miss your allotted time for voting because there's gridlock at the metal detector, there definitely could be issues there. The fine also attempts to address growing concerns from members who feel unsafe at the Capitol in the wake of the violent insurrection and those who, since the attack, have wanted to beef up their security due to a fear of other members. Seriously, if you're that afraid of people, if you're that afraid of members of Congress, then perhaps you need to go seek counseling. Members of Congress are probably amongst the softest people in the country, nay, the world. These people are career politicians, or the only accomplishment in life has been being a politician. They're loudmouths, empty suits who will say whatever it takes to please enough people for them to get enough votes to go into public office. They haven't done anything hard in their lives other than suck up to a community, get enough votes, and then go to Washington, D.C. and become corporate sellouts. That's exactly what being a politician is nowadays. And for them to say, "Oh, I feel safe. Oh, we need to beef up security due to a fear of other members." You know what I'm afraid of? I'm afraid that Eric Swalwell is still on the House Intel Committee after sleeping with a Chinese spy. I'm afraid of that. I'm afraid of how he might be compromised. I'm afraid of conflicts of interest within the Joe Biden administration. I have legitimate fear when it comes to that. I don't have some naive fear that my neighbor looked at me weird when he was walking the dog and, oh my goodness, I need to hire more police and put a metal detector at the front door of my house. So every time my neighbor comes into my home, I can ensure that he's only bringing his keys. And if the metal detector goes off, I'm going to be like, whoa, sir. Empty out your pockets. I need to pat you down. I'm sorry, sir. It's going to be public. There's going to be cameras right there. We're going to see what's going on. And it's going to be live streamed for all the world to see. It's bananas. Sorry. The people in the House, with the exception of a few, are very soft individuals. So even if they do concealed carry, they're not going to be the aggressor. A lot of people conceal carry for self-defense. A lot of them are somewhat insecure, and that's why they conceal carry. If I were to conceal carry, because I have a concealed carry license, if I were to conceal carry, I don't most of the time because I just don't go to areas where I feel like I need to be concealed carrying. So my argument is, if I need to go to a place where I feel like I need to be concealed carrying in order to be safe where I'm going, I'll just avoid going to that place altogether, because why would I put myself at unnecessary risk? It's all about having a risk assessment. But these individuals don't have that opportunity. They're in one of the worst neighborhoods in America, in one of the worst parts of the United States for crime, for violent crime, and not allowing them to protect themselves on their commute to work. I say if they have 24/7 Capitol Police escorts, by all means, not allow, basically deny them their Second Amendment rights while they're a member of the House, while they're on the floor, so be it. Whatever. You do your thing, Sugar Bear. But unless that's the case, no, you can't have it both ways. You can't take away their rights and then basically say, hey, guess what? Lauren Boebert is now disarmed. Go wail on her on the street because guess what? She's no longer armed. She can't commute with her firearm because when she goes to work, she has to go through a metal detector and she can't bring her weapon on the house floor, so she can't commute with it. It's it's the justification behind it, the reasoning behind it, the mental gymnastics behind it is bananas. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, a California Democrat, told reporters last week that while she is committed to addressing the concerns of her colleagues over security, that effort is hampered because the enemy is within the House of Representatives. I would love to see some evidence on that. Show me an ounce of evidence. Show me something more than someone being cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. Because honestly, they're just turning Marjorie Taylor Greene into the next Donald Trump. And I don't know if they're doing it on purpose. I believe they're doing it on purpose. I believe they want to label her as the face of the Republican Party. They want to give her as much attention as possible. That way she becomes a national interest. That way she's too big to tear down on with the GOP. Pelosi released a statement on Tuesday night following passage of the rule. It is beyond comprehension why any member would refuse to adhere to these simple, common sense steps to keep the body safe. Well, honestly, it won't keep it safe, in my opinion. If you have, so say you have 100 members in Congress, all concealed carrying, and a Capitol riot occurs, you have 100 guns on top of where the police are, trained at helping keep you alive, because guess what? There are not enough Capitol Police. If there were 1 million people storming the Capitol, you would not have enough Capitol Police there to protect members of Congress. Having 100 more people with guns would certainly help. It is sad that we have been forced to move forward with a rule change imposing fines on those who refuse to abide by these protections, but the People's House must and will be safe so that we can honor our responsibility to do the people's work. So, how does this affect the ability to do the people's work? All I hear is a bunch of whining. I hear that, oh, my fellow congressperson is, and I'm going to do this on a later episode, she's referring to Kevin McCarthy as a QAnon conspiracy theorist. She labeled him as a QOP member and called him Kevin McCarthy, but instead of a K with a Q. And I believe Kevin McCarthy has a slam dunk libel case against Nancy Pelosi because guess what? That does damage his reputation, his political reputation. It associates him with a conspiracy theory, which he's not a part of. And she should get in a lot of trouble for that. That is unbecoming of the Speaker of the House. And if that's where politics has resorted to, as just basically come down to, then why do we even have a House of Representatives if they're just going to be a bunch of 8-year-olds? Jumping over to Seattle. This week, Seattle Public Schools and other area schools are teaching students in kindergarten to pick their gender, combat a so-called hetero-patriarchal society, and disrupt the nuclear family structure. The lessons are part of the Black Lives Matter at School movement. The radical political agendas on gender identity and the family structure have some parents livid. These topics are not age appropriate. That is true. I do not want my kindergartner basically being told that they do not need a daddy. Hoping for an alternative viewpoints to BLM talking points, there are none presented to students, and it's all by design. Indeed, SPS believes them to be bigoted. Seattle Public Schools will spend the week promoting Black Lives Matter lessons to students. Teachers are encouraged to offer their opinions, the intent to push a liberal agenda. BLM lessons teach gender identity. You wouldn't normally associate BLM with issues on gender identity, but one of its founders, Alicia Garza, believes the two to be intertwined. In the SPS lessons for pre-K through third grade pre-K, you're talking about 4 and 5-year-olds. 4 and 5-year-olds, people. This is bananas. are introduced to a number of radical concepts, none of which they would even understand. Black, queer, and trans folks bearing a unique burden in a hetero-patriarchal society that disposes of us like garbage and simultaneously fetishizes us and profits off us is a state violence. Friends, this is bananas. You should not be teaching 4-year-olds this. I'm sorry. As a parent to a 5-year-old, you should not be teaching 5-year-olds this. They are not. They should be ignorant to this stuff when they're 5 years old. Don't emotionally abuse them when they're 4 and 5. This is abuse. I'm sorry, but this is abuse. All the lessons and resources center around 13 guiding principles, which include being queer and trans affirming. They tell young children to do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege and uplift Black trans folk. So they tell young children to do the work required to dismantle cisgender privilege. So how do you so I just don't want to get in trouble for what I really want to say. Pick your gender or none at all. Teachers are specifically informed that their students need to see how problematic our binary notions of gender are. With that in mind, students must reject what their doctor or parents say. What? We're being told to trust the science, and now students must reject what their doctors or parents say about their biological gender? What? How does this make any sort of the I don't understand the rationality behind this. Teachers are asked to read this to their captive students. If our doctor and our parents assign us a gender and it matches what we feel inside, then we can say we are cisgender. However, we may look like what society says a girl or boy should look like, but inside we feel something different than just a boy or just a girl. We are somewhere in between. We can say that we are gender expansive or transgender. Seriously, do not be teaching this to 4-year-olds. This is child abuse, in my opinion. And cutting out the father, BLM had taken heat for its cynical views on the nuclear family. The lessons to children are no less disconcerting. We are committed to disrupting the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each other as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another, and especially our children, to the degree that mothers, parents, and children are comfortable. This principle exposes children to a concept of family that completely cuts out fathers, and if you're looking for alternative perspectives, look elsewhere in Seattle. So, one of the main determinations of success in life, or basically your success in not being a criminal in life, is whether or not you have a father in the home. You think that an organization like Black Lives Matter would want to ensure the nuclear family would remain stable in order to give the best chance for those Black children to succeed in life, because having a broken home often leads to living a broken life. And it's been well documented. Individuals doing not as well in school, more likely to go to jail, more likely to make less money throughout life. Always there's exceptions to the rules, of course, but it's something to keep in mind. And why would they be pushing something that's documented untrue? Why would they be pushing an agenda which would actually make Black children do worse in life? It's things like this that make you question the legitimacy of organizations such as this. Alternative perspectives are racist. SPS once hoped teachers would provide students with alternative opinions on controversial topics, but that time has passed. I asked SPS how schools will ensure students hear viewpoints beyond political Black Lives Matter talking points. A spokesperson for SPS pointed me to this section of their strategic plan. Generally speaking, the alternative, the competing point of view, has been the predominant viewpoint for several hundred years in the United States and much of the Western Hemisphere. In other words, it has been the status quo. Seattle Public Schools is working to dramatically improve academic and life outcomes for students of color by disrupting the legacies of racism in our education system. So basically saying, if you don't like what we have to say, it's because you're exercising white privilege, you're multiracial white supremacy, insert whatever they want to use to automatically dismiss your point of view. And it is bananas. This is bananas to say, hey, I want to push that perhaps having a a long-lasting nuclear family, I believe that having two parents in the home, it doesn't need to be a man and a woman. You can have um, a LGBTQI nuclear family, right? It doesn't necessarily need to be a cisgender nuclear family. All it means is you have two parents in the home, and the children are more likely to succeed. But to say, oh, well, no, you don't need a nuclear family. And we actually just, well, you just need a village. The village is going to take care of the kid. No. Do you know what villages take care of the kids? The gangs in New York City, where the divorce rates are through the, or basically unwed pregnancies are through the roof. Gang rates are through the roof. And it's just why? Why would you push this agenda? You're setting children up for the opposite of success. You're setting the children up for failure. And it just makes me wonder, what is the purpose behind these organizations other than to fail the communities that they claim to want to help? So before we keep going, friends, why don't you go ahead and smash that like button, comment if you haven't already, share. That would really help us out. And if you'd like to contribute to the show, please go to notcensored.com/donate. We have links available. It would really help us out. So jumping over the hill, Biden administration moves to free up $1.3 billion in funding for Puerto Rico. The Department of Housing and Urban Development, in partnership with Puerto Rico's housing agency, approved the release of the money through the Community Development Block Grant Mitigation Program. The $1.3 billion, which was allocated by Congress, can be used to guard against future climate-related disasters. HUD and the Biden administration are committed to working with Puerto Rico to reset our relationship on the island's recovery efforts. And the action we are taking today will play a key role in this effort by ensuring that Puerto Rico is able to access and spend critical disaster and recovery funds on urgent unmet needs. The administration is still working with island agencies to release another roughly $5 billion in funds that were restricted under Trump administration regulations, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said. So this is kind of interesting. I agree and disagree at the same time. Tuesday's announcement came a day after Psaki said Biden administration is working to free up funding for Puerto Rico intended for recovery efforts from Hurricane Maria that had been held up during the previous administration. Boom, that's what I want to talk about. So Hurricane Maria, if I'm recalling the correct hurricane, Trump sent a lot of federal aid and it just stayed in warehouses. And it was found a year or two later, and a lot of stuff in that warehouse had expired by that time. There was another natural disaster, and people were wondering, what's in that warehouse? Why is that warehouse being guarded by the National Guard? And the citizens broke into it, and it was just filled with water, baby formula, food, uh, medicine, medical supplies, anything you could dream of. It was in there, and it was from the first natural disaster, which I believe was Hurricane Maria. So I agree that some of this funding should be used to help out Puerto Rico, but if the government is corrupt and can't be trusted to use the things that the United States gives them to do what they're supposed to do, then should we actually be obligated to give them more? They're not they're not a state. Half of Puerto Rico does not want to be a state of the United States. They don't want to pay the taxes. They don't want to deal with the burden of being a state of the United States. They like that weird transient property that they are. They're American, but they're not. It's kind of in between, state of which they reside in. A lot of Puerto Ricans like that. But this is more nuanced than just saying, well, it's Trump's fault that they didn't get all the money. No, it's also the governments of Puerto Rico's fault that they're not getting all the money. It's the governments of Puerto Rico's fault that they didn't get all the supplies, because they had the supplies. They locked them up. And then the governor of Puerto Rico said, oh, well, it was this secretary's, not a secretary's fault, but, secretary of department that, hid the stuff, and they were fired for corruption and blah, blah, blah. But instead of taking responsibility, they offset the blame onto somebody else. But there's a lot of political corruption that goes on in Puerto Rico, and nobody's talking about it. So possibly there could be a reason why the Trump administration put a lot of restrictions on this money, knowing that there's a lot of corruption that goes on in the political system of Puerto Rico. And finally, let's go over to the Lily. Women are missing from the GameStop news. Experts blame this fratty subreddit. Chloe Stevens bought her first stock when she was 10 years old. She and her dad would track the markets on CNBC, buying into Barnes & Noble and the Hershey Company because they were doing well, but also because Stevens liked books and chocolate. By age 20, Stevens knew she had a passion for personal finance and she wanted to get better at it. Stevens, now 21, kept hearing about one particular subreddit, now known as the community that drove GameStop's stock market surge. Once she joined, she quickly realized that our Wall Street Bets was not a welcoming place for women. And I completely disagree, because how are you supposed to know that they're a woman? It's an anonymous community. Unless you basically come out as whatever your gender is, your identity, who you are. No one knows who you are on Reddit. That's the lovely part about it. Since GameStonk took off last week, much has been written about the various players in the story, the Redditors and amateur financiers who invested in struggling video game company, and the Wall Street moguls who bet against its success. On both sides, the vast majority of stakeholders are men. How do you know that? How do you know that? Unfolding at the intersection of three male-dominated spheres, Reddit, video games, and Wall Street, the GameStop story was always going to be the dude-centric, said Adrienne Mezzarani, a professor of communication at the University of Illinois at Chicago who studies digital culture and gender and has written a book about Reddit. While women have made inroads in these traditionally male spaces, she said, Wall Street Bets, the original entry point for the latest round of GameStonk trading, feels particularly inaccessible to many women, Mezzarani said, with posters trafficking in misogynistic and racist comments. That is not true. That's not, like, I basically browse Wall Street Bets. I don't really see racist things go against the community standards. Misogynistic things, you really don't see it on there. They talk about being apes, and apes together are strong because apes have all the we apes have the bananas. How is that misogynistic or racist? Exactly. They talk about diamond hands to the moon. It's meme trading. They're not serious. They brag about how much money they lose. It's betting. This is not Wall Street finance. This is not stock tips. This is not how to get rich. This is Wall Street Bets. They're treating Wall Street like a casino. They're saying if we pull our bananas together, we will drive the price up for all the bananas, and then we'll sell our bananas for a lot of money. Just don't be the one holding the bag, but you gotta diamond hand it. You can't sell early, friends. We gotta drive that price up. It's a bet. A lot of these people brag about how they lost millions of dollars. They'll show screenshots of how they lost millions of dollars. And it's called loss porn, I believe. Just how much money they lose. Personal finance, especially stocks and investments, can be an intimidating subject for a lot of people, but especially for women. Until relatively recently, women were entirely shut out of financial discussions. Their father handled the money, then their husband handled the money. Married women were not legally allowed to hold a credit card in their own name until the mid-70s. Single women also struggled to get their own line of credit. I feel like it's just so ingrained for women. Oh, investing, that's boy talk. That's not for us, Stevens said. Nobody's saying that. Sorry, nobody's saying that in 2020. I would like to hear who actually told her that in 2020. Who's of normal age. And by normal age, I mean less than 50. And now, if you have some 80-year-old butthole who says that, okay, well, they're just 80 years old and a butthole. Just ask Joe Biden, who says if you don't vote for him, you are not black. And he still managed to become the president of the damn United States of America. So you need to check yourself before you wreck yourself, people, because this is getting ridiculous. She was determined to break into the boys' clubs. When she searched for investment advice, she said Wall Street Bets kept coming up, surfacing with its avatar of a white man in a suit with slick back hair and sunglasses. Right away, Stevens struggled to understand the dense financial language and acronyms. So many acronyms, she said. She avoided asking questions, she said, worried that commenters would make fun of her for being too stupid to understand. No, they make fun of themselves for being stupid. They call themselves retarded. They call themselves autistic. They say, I can be retarded longer than they can remain autistic, or longer than they can remain solvent. And I'm so basically all they're doing is calling themselves stupid for placing these bets. I'm going to put $20,000 on GameStop because I'm stupid. That's exactly what they're saying. So for her to say, oh, they're going to make fun of me for being stupid, no, they make fun of themselves for being stupid. That is not a thing. She is making excuses and she is outright lying. The subreddit Wall Street Bets is different from other personal finance subreddits. Mazanari said it's impenetrable to people not already well versed in both finance and meme culture. That is also BS. Honestly, that's where I learned about shorting stocks was through Wall Street Bets. They said this is the basic way this is like the basic breakdown of shorting stocks. Let's see if I can look this up real quick on here. Let's see. Wall Street Bets. Short stock meme. Banana gorilla. My spelling is bad. Let's see if I can find this. Explain to me like I'm 5. Wall Street Bets. Let's see. That one's not good. So, but basically they talk about you have snakes wanting to buy bananas from gorillas, buying 10 bananas from gorillas with the hope that the value of those bananas would decline, and then they would only have to sell 1 banana back when they originally bought 10, profiting 9 bananas, right? So this was from Wall Street Bets. I can't currently find it real quick because my DuckDuckGo foo isn't fast enough. For sure if I was using Google, but I'm kind of boycotting Google at the moment for what they're kind of doing. And I've noticed a lot of trackers on my browser lately, so I've been avoiding that. But so the goal is to basically drive that price down to 1 so you profit the 9 bananas. That's what the snake wants. So the gorillas catch on to what's happening. So what do? The gorillas then all pull together. They all pull their resources and buy all the bananas after the snake buys 10. Now the price for the bananas has increased to 100 bananas. And so now the snake needs to pay 100 bananas to the gorillas. And the snake loses 90 bananas. So basically the snake can only stand to profit 9 bananas, but it can lose an infinite amount of bananas depending on how diamond hands by how dedicated the gorillas are to basically cornering the market on the bananas. So the snake can lose infinite. And I only learned this because of Wall Street Bets. So to say that you're too stupid to understand, or if you're not well versed in finance and meme culture, no. Meme culture is also, the whole point of meme culture is you don't need to understand it. You just read the meme and you laugh. The subreddit does not claim to offer investment advice. It's a community for making money, the moderators say, or realistically, a place to come and upvote memes when your portfolio is down. Still, many people join, hoping to increase their financial savvy. But there is no, hey, you're new here. Here's how this works. Unless you're putting a bunch of rocket ships and diamond emojis in a post, referencing to common emojis in the subreddit, you're going to feel like you don't belong. Of course, Wall Street Bets is not entirely male. While it's impossible to know how many people on the subreddit are women, Reddit users are anonymous. There are certainly some women who regularly use and enjoy the platform, but it's not for everyone. As women on Wall Street Bets, you have to be willing to put up with a lot of racist and misogynistic stuff. Again, show me the racist and misogynistic stuff that's not posted by a bot. Because everything that seems to be posted that they said was racist or anti-Semitic, it appeared to have been posted by bots. Or posted in such a way because they set up their content filters to disallow racist stuff. So I don't understand how you go, oh, well, you need to just swim through all this racism and misogyny. If you're a woman, especially if you're a woman of color, you have to do. Again, it's a bunch of people making fun of themselves about how much money they lost. Again, you're only investing. Wall Street is a casino, in my opinion, and you should only invest what you're prepared to lose. So if you're prepared to lose $1 million, then you better be prepared to lose $1 million. You run the chance of making $1 billion from your $1 million, but you also stand to lose $1 million from your $1 million. So there's always that. That's why it's called Wall Street Bets. When Katja Gravel joined, she said she immediately recognized a bro-y, fratty mentality. Commenters would call things retarded and autistic, like I said before, and joke about how all women are cheaters. He and his were the default pronouns, which depending on... So Remember, Reddit is international, friends. So if you speak Spanish, he and his is the default pronouns that you use. So there's a lot of people who English is their second language, and then they'll chat in these chat rooms. And guess what they'll use? They'll use whatever their universal pronoun is, which is typically masculine because that's just proper grammar. That is not being sexist. It's just there's not really like a they them that translates well from Spanish into English that would make logical sense because you wouldn't use that language in Spanish while addressing a individual. Um, these were all words I used when I was 12 before I realized they were not okay, said Gravel32, who works in recruitment in North Carolina. She never flagged the inappropriate comments, she said, knowing she'd get called out for being a sensitive snowflake or stupid loser. That doesn't happen. When you report a comment, it just goes to a moderator. That's it. They don't they see that that someone flagged it, and if you keep moderating or if you keep flagging something that's not flaggable, it will just ban you from the Reddit because you're just causing trouble. Because there's people who do that. There's people who do it to just screw with other people to waste the moderator's time. That's how real violations slip through the cracks because people are being sensitive. They told all these crude jokes, things women just don't tend to say. One of my favorite memes that are currently going on, it's a little girl crying under a desk. It's a little anime girl. She's crying, and on her legs, it says, well, basically over top of her in the meme, it says Wall Street hedge fund managers and crying and hiding and scared. And then the Terminator holding the machine gun walking to the office. And it says the plebs with their $600 stimulus checks, right? Or Wall Street bets with their $600 stimulus checks. So basically, them being able to disrupt the market just with a $600 stimulus check. And then there's other memes talking about, whoa, if you think what we did with $600 is impressive, look what we can do with a $2,000 stimulus check. So their memes aren't really sexist. All their memes are just jokes. And I've been laughing really hard with a lot of them. They did one with the Iron Giant that said, "You sell, I'll hold," and then the giant metal man goes flying towards the rocket and sacrifices himself so the little boy can sell his stock. It's delightful. It's just hilarious, some of the memes that go out. Of course, there's going to be some distasteful things, but the distasteful memes are definitely the exception and not the norm. Do not try to paint the picture of it. It's not a fun place to be if you are not a white man. Why does gender have to be a part of everything with people nowadays? This is bananas. Speaking of bananas, Wall Street Bets wants you to be a gorilla and hold on to your bananas with a diamond fist. Women also feel alienated by the type of investing that takes place on Wall Street Bets, said Terrence Odine, a professor of finance at the Haas School of Business at the University of California at Berkeley, who has focused on gender. All of these people focus on gender. Why can't you just focus on being good at your job? If you want to invest for retirement or manage your financial portfolio, he said, you should find a different community. The Wall Street Bets is about betting, he said, which appeals to men, particularly single men, far more than women who tend to be more risk averse. Theoretical models predict that overconfident investors trade excessively. Gravel has never been interested in taking major financial risks. After a few weeks on Wall Street Bets, she said she realized the subreddit was basically legalized gambling with a slightly educated guess. That's what stock market investing is. It is legal gambling. I've made thousands of dollars in a day. I've lost thousands of dollars in a day, all with an initial investment of $1,000. It's crazy for them to say, oh, well, it's just legal. If Wall Street is legalized gambling. You have these businesses who are being shorted so much by some of these companies, and when they make their calls, their stock price does jump up a bit. And if you're smart and you're looking at the trends and you go, this company should be valued higher, I'm going to buy because they've been bottomed out for months and basically they have nowhere to go other than out of business or their stock to normalize back to where it was a year ago before the pandemic. I'm going to invest $1,000, and then you see that quadruple or go up by 10 like it has with some brands, then guess what? You profited just like those hedge funds did. So you just have to look at the trends. Of course, you can get more science. You can get more like financial analytical about it. And I've taken finance classes. They really didn't interest me. I'm more into I'll research the company if I like what they're doing and if I feel like they're undervalued. especially if they're being undervalued present day, right? So if they lost a lot due to the crash in March of last year and they've remained really low, but they have been doing interesting things in the meantime, but it seems like something's been artificially keeping their stock suppressed, I will go out of my way to invest in them thinking that, well, not even thinking, knowing that either A, I'm going to lose $1,000 because I'll only invest $1,000, either I'm going to lose $1,000 or I'll stand to make a couple $1,000. So it is what it is. I'm not a financial expert, so take my advice with a grain of salt, but that's how I managed to at least break even. So even when I lose money, I haven't lost a net amount of money, but I have, gained, but I've gained, but I haven't made a net loss yet. So that's going to be it for now, friends. It's just, like I said, the intersectionality of what's going on, what they're trying to pump into Wall Street bets, trying to make it into something it's not. When this was first a thing, remember when it was a right-wing extremist group likened to the Capitol 6 rioters, and then it was neo-Nazi white supremacists, and then they were suddenly the good guys when they were pumping up the price of silver, which benefited Melvin Capital. Now they're bad again, and women are missing from the GameStop news. So what are they? Be consistent. Why are we having to? Why can't it just be a group of people? Why can't it be the populace? Why can't it be we the people versus the establishment? And for once, we the people managed to reach our hands in the pocket of the establishment and take a little money back, because 700,000 small businesses lost everything due to the shutdown, while these giant corporations, while these giant hedge funds made billions and trillions of dollars overall. So that's going to be it for now, friends. Until next time, I'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye.